But let's get a move on then and also focus in on what the outlook has been on the aviation sector as well. Has there been complete consolidation in the aviation space? Are we looking at recovery being completely delayed? Is the subdued demand here to stay? All those questions and more answered by Akash Gupta, Director, APAC Corporate Ratings at Fitch. Thanks so much for taking time out. Just walk us through what we're looking at for the entire aviation sector as a whole, because with activity having completely slowed down, all of these lockdowns being implemented, a lot of countries prohibiting Indians from entering, I understand that the traffic numbers have halved in a matter of weeks, and that this second wave has, to a great extent precipitated the complete collapse of the aviation sector. Is that true?
Yeah, you're right. The second wave has definitely put the brakes on at least the recovery of the sector. So we had seen domestic passenger volumes return to around 60% of pre-COVID levels by March. But volumes have dropped sharply in April to around 40% of pre-COVID and further in May. So the sector is also facing the impact of higher fuel prices. So at the present time, cash burn is quite large for the airlines.
Okay, so walk us through what it's been like in terms of the overall traffic numbers, how much the second wave has affected this.
Right. So I think if you look at the numbers published by DGCA, right? So the numbers suggest that by March we were around 60% of pre-COVID levels. Now, in April, that came down to 40%. So there has been a sharp drop in April. And from what we hear, that in May, the volumes have also sort of dropped significantly. So it appears it could be around 20% of pre-COVID levels. So probably we are around back to the level we were in August last year.
Right. Do you think this time around the fundraising will be slightly difficult, because first time everybody had the muscle to raise funds to manage cost, but this time around that may not be the case for all airlines?
I think there's definitely a risk that fundraising would be difficult at this present time. So we have seen sort of Indigo trying to raise funds through QIP and GoAir also looking to have an IPO. What I feel is that the smaller airlines will be the ones who would probably struggle more in these times, and it remains to be seen how successful, for example, GoAir's IPO is. But they may have to look at other options if that is not successful. So certainly, I think given the fact that some other sectors are doing well, and given also the fact that there is clearly a difference in terms of the ability of smaller versus larger airlines to cope with this stress, the smaller airlines are likely to struggle.
Right. In terms of restarting back, will it be much easier because there is already a precedent? Last time it really took a long time to get back to 60-70% levels. You think this time around, whenever the restart happens, it'll be faster?
I think the restart obviously is dependent on the confidence amongst passengers, right? So in terms of the industry response, I think they definitely have some experience from last year. So from an operational standpoint, the restart could be fast, but then we also need to see how passengers respond. So I feel that the trend could be similar to what we saw last year. So we are likely to see first quarter, which would be extremely weak, but then gradual recovery from 2Q onwards, and probably in FY22 at a similar level of around 60% of pre-COVID levels. Of course, this also depends on how long the second wave prolongs, and if it does, then the recovery will be pushed back accordingly.
So what, in your opinion, should be the course of action for aviation companies in order to really survive these very turbulent times, if you will, in terms of making sure that their financials are kept in check, their overall debt levels don't balloon, and the potential impact of a third wave as well?
So I think there are limited options for the airlines at the present moment. So airlines are trying to basically focus on sectors segments such as cargos. They're also looking at fundraising. And I think these are all sort of the right things to do. They're also trying to ask the government for some sort of intervention or support. Now, how much of that intervention or support will come through in terms of direct financial benefits to these airlines, it remains to be seen. But then what we could see for the industry as a whole, I think number one is sort of consolidation. So we could see that market share for larger airlines could increase further. So this was something that we saw last year. So we saw Indigo's market share of domestic passengers rise to 60% by July from around 50% pre-COVID. So that is something that could recur. And also, I think some help that the government, the industry may look forward to from the government is in terms of setting a strict sort of reducing the capacity cap from the current 80% or strictly enforcing the lower fare limit. So I think these are some things that we could see over the next few months.
All right. Okay, we'll let you go on that note. I have a follow-up. You were talking about some sort of government intervention. That's what the sector is longing for at a time like this. What have you made of the moves, or rather even the lack of it, that the government has taken so far? And what else is on the wish list for the survival of the aviation industry?
Right. I think, globally we have seen governments trying to bail out airlines. And I think the expectation was that the Indian government also might do something similar. But then we also have to be mindful of the government's other sort of budgetary constraints, etc. So at this point, I think direct financial support is unlikely. But then, as I mentioned, I think the government may look to help the smaller players, especially by reducing the capacity cap. So if that happens, then essentially you're limiting the ability of larger, stronger players such as Indigo to actually take away market share from the smaller players. I think that could be a positive, and that is something which we may see, given this already happened last year. I think this probably is something which is more reasonable to expect rather than, say, more drastic measures such as providing bailouts or reducing taxes, etc.
All right, let you go on that note. Thanks much for taking time out and giving us a clearer picture as to how things are shaping up for the aviation space. Let's take a very short break. Be right back as we update you with the latest on the COVID situation in the country.